Chapter 17. Rose stood on the sidelines of the dance floor, feeling as though all the ballrooms in London looked very much the same. It was uncommon to see new faces at any of the balls she attended. It really was a rarefied society she was circulating in, she thought drolly to herself as she scanned the crowds around her, looking for a friendly face. Her gaze had just met that of her dear friend Elizabeth, when a cold hand on her arm stopped her upraised arm from waving. Her attention snagged, and her blood turned to ice in her veins, as she heard the dreaded voice near her ear. "Miss Smythe, what a pleasure to see you here this evening. Might I have a word with you?" The words were polite, but the grip on her arm belied the request. Rose winced as Sir Broderick tugged her toward the back of the room. Rose glanced around rather frantically, calculating the damage to her reputation should she make a scene, wondering if she should cry for help, or see the situation out and take it from there. Broderick took the decision out of her hands with his next words. "Do not bother calling for help, my dear girl." His low, menacing tone brought a shiver to Rose's stiff spine. "My associates have your mother in their control, and will not hesitate to hurt her if you do not cooperate with my requests." With an effort of will, Rose managed to control the scream threatening to crawl up her throat. She felt as though her features had turned to stone as she hurried along beside the ungentlemanly knight. Her ever-active imagination wondered fleetingly what others might see if they really looked at her. From her frantic gaze, it did not appear as though anyone were noticing that aught was amiss. She castigated herself for not ensuring her mother was safe. They should not have ventured out this evening. Alex had tried to warn her that there might be a threat, and she had thought she knew better. Giving her head a shake, Rose forced the recriminations from her mind. They were not at all helpful at the moment. Hoping to buy a little time, she dug in her heels and slowed down. "My lord, I beg of you, I cannot in all decency run after you. If you do not wish to be remarked upon, it will not do for us to be seen dashing from the room." Broderick's grip on her arm did not lessen. In fact, his grip tightened painfully, but he did slow down his pace somewhat. Rose racked her brain for ideas as to how to extricate herself from this predicament, but the threat to her mother curtailed any of her schemes. She would have happily shredded her reputation and screamed at the top of her lungs in order to get away from the slimy Sir Jason Broderick, but the thought of his henchman harming her mother kept her lips firmly clamped shut. Before she could formulate any executable plan, they were treading down a hallway, and the knight tugged her down another dimly lit passage. Rose's terror heightened as she realized she was about to be escorted from the house entirely. She could see no way of escape, and wondered fleetingly if her parents would ever find out what had happened to their only daughter. Rose decided not to just meekly go to her death. Digging her heels in once more, Rose tried to come to a standstill. "This has gotten ridiculous, my lord. I wish to know the meaning of your actions. I do not appreciate your threats toward my mother. I have accompanied you from the ballroom as you requested. I assume you wish to have words with me. Very well, my lord. Have your say. But then I insist that I be reunited with my mother. I must be reassured of her welfare." Broderick's smile put Rose in mind of a weasel as he looked at her steadily through his small, dark eyes. "You are in no position to be making any sort of demands, Miss Smythe, are you? There is no one about to aid you in enforcing them. But, in fact, just around the next corner, several of my friends are waiting for us, so if you should start to struggle or call out, they shall be here to aid me in the blink of your pretty green eyes. So screaming shan't do you a lick of good." "What do you want, Sir Broderick? Why have you accosted me in this ill-bred manner?" Broderick grinned. "I know you think I am lower than the dirt beneath your dainty little feet, Miss Smythe, but you are not the one in control here." He tugged on her arm once more, but again Rose resisted. His words implied to her that there were other undercurrents in play, but her scattered wits could not quite get a grip on any of her ideas. She determined to try further speech. "I refuse to go one step further until you tell me what is going on, Sir Broderick. You know it is not at all the thing for me to be accompanying you anywhere unchaperoned. If you were wishing to spend time with me, you ought to call upon me at my home at the prescribed time, like any other gentleman." Despite her fears, Rose had to exert an effort to suppress her amusement over the look of incredulity that flitted across the knight's twisted features. "I am not trying to fix your affections, Miss Smythe," he declared with disgust. "I am trying to keep your meddling ways from interfering with my plans." "What plans have I been meddling with, my lord?" Rose inquired, trying to ascertain the depth of her danger. "Do not play coy with me, Miss Smythe. I have been well aware of your meddling ever since Vienna. Did you think I would find it difficult to figure out that it was through you that your father and his cronies always seemed to be one step ahead of me? You might have been able to thwart me in Vienna, but you are not going to be able to do so this time. Prinny will sign the territories over to me, and there won't be anything you or your interfering father can do about it." "What are you going to do with me, my lord? Surely you are too smart to be able to be thwarted by a mere girl, so you need not trouble yourself with me." Rose was becoming truly terrified as she examined the maniacal look that had settled itself upon Broderick's features as he spoke of the Prince Regent and his land. She could not contain the yelp of pain that escaped her as his fingers dug deeper into her upper arm. "You are far more trouble than you ever let on, aren't you? Now quit resisting, Miss Smythe. If you give me any more trouble, I will not hesitate to bash you over the head and carry your insensate body quietly from this house. I highly doubt you would enjoy that experience, though it would not bother me one little bit. In fact, I do believe I would enjoy it immensely." Now Rose could see that he was looking at her rather lecherously, and her fear ratcheted up another notch, threatening to choke her. Looking behind her frantically once more, she realized there was no one coming to her aid. She needed to keep her wits about her and figure out a way to rescue herself. She could not afford to have him deprive her of her senses. She stopped resisting and forced her feet to move once more, but she could not make herself stop questioning him. "Where are you taking me, my lord? And why? What do you hope to accomplish by taking me? Surely you must realize that it will merely draw attention to your intentions if a hue and cry is made over me." Rose was hoping to appeal to the greedy little man's logic. "But that is where you are wrong, my dear Miss Smythe," the awful man replied with an oily grin. "No one noticed our departure, and there is no reason to associate your disappearance with me in any way. In fact, if you disappear, it will keep your father far too occupied for him to even consider going to Paris and interfering there. And all the ton will be too abuzz with speculations over what could have possibly happened to you to be bothered with matters of government. It is an absolutely brilliant plan." "But if my mother is missing as well, surely it will become obvious that something nefarious is afoot." "Ah, Miss Smythe, you really do need to learn not to trust what everyone tells you. The last I saw of your mother, she was happily sipping punch and listening raptly to something old Lady Rotherham was jabbering away about." Broderick chuckled cruelly over the look of disbelief he saw on Rose's face. "And soon you will write a note to your parents telling them you have run off with a seaman you met in the park, so that will give them some direction in their thrashing about over you. It should buy me just enough time to accomplish my ends." "And just what might those ends be, my lord?" Rose could not resist asking. "Never mind about that now. You have wasted enough of my time. Hurry along, or I shall be happy to carry you." Rose did not doubt he would enjoy knocking her unconscious, so she did as he had bade and forced her feet to a quicker pace. By now they reached a small door and had been joined by two other unsavoury-looking characters. "Where are you taking me?" she squeaked as she saw the dark carriage through the open doorway. "I'll tell you when we get there," was Broderick's unhelpful reply. Rose's teeth began to chatter from a combination of her nerves and the cool night air. She clenched them together to hold back the screams of alarm that were clawing to be heard. After taking one frantic glance back at the large house before ducking into the carriage, she could have sworn she saw Alex at one of the brightly lit windows, but she chastised herself for conjuring him in her fear. And besides, even if it was him, there was no way he could see her in the dark gloom from within the brightly lit room. Taking her seat across from Sir Broderick, Rose stared at him stonily. Elizabeth was in a quandary. She had been so certain that Rose was about to approach her. In fact, Elizabeth was sure Rose had been raising her arm to wave to her when she was approached by Sir Broderick. Because of the distance that had separated them, Elizabeth had been unable to see clearly what was taking place, but she was absolutely certain Rose would not happily accompany the knight anywhere. But what should she do about this information? She had not spoken with Rose in a day or two, so she was unsure of the latest developments. As far as she knew, Rose's parents were still unaware of the association Rose had been having with the Duke of Wrentham, and why she had been doing it. So it would require too much explanation if Elizabeth were to seek out Rose's parents and tell them what she thought she had seen. And there was part of the trouble. She was unsure of what she had really witnessed, but now Rose was nowhere to be seen in the ballroom, and Elizabeth was growing increasingly uneasy. She took one more turn around the dance floor, looking around as innocuously as she could manage. Then she headed toward the ladies' retiring room, thinking Rose could perhaps be there. When Elizabeth could not locate her friend there or in the refreshment room, she was truly concerned and started to verge onto panic. With relief, she spied the Duke of Wrentham in the crowd. "Your Grace, I am terribly sorry to disturb you, but might I have a word with you?" She tried to be as discreet as possible, but her urgency must have conveyed itself clearly as she gained the Duke's full attention. The hairs at the back of Alex's neck stirred uncomfortably as he heard the young woman's voice at his side. He recognized Rosie's friend, Lady Elizabeth, and wondered at her nervous tone. "What can I do for you this evening, my lady?" he asked solicitously. "I have a concern I would like to discuss with you as quietly as possible." Elizabeth glanced around as she spoke, heightening Alex's awareness of the young lady's distress. "Is everything all right with you, Lady Elizabeth?" Alex asked, as he offered her his elbow and guided her toward a small alcove that was momentarily abandoned. Elizabeth did not bother with beating around the bush, merely launching into her explanation. "I apologize for disturbing you, Your Grace, and please excuse my forward behavior, but I did not know who else to turn to." Alex blinked over the girl's words, but merely nodded encouragingly, unsure what this was leading to. Elizabeth took a deep breath and began her tale. "I was standing on the side of the dance floor, waiting for my next partner, when I saw Rose for the first time this evening. She looked preoccupied, but when our eyes met she smiled a greeting and looked as though she were about to wave and come towards me. But just as she was raising her arm, I saw Sir Broderick grab it. He said a few words to her and then they left the room together. She did not struggle or anything like that, but I cannot believe she would have voluntarily left with him. Rose really does not like him." At the lady's mention of Broderick, Alex felt all the air rush out of his lungs, and he felt light-headed for a brief moment, but he managed to contain himself and listen to whatever she had to share. "I thought to tell Rose's parents, or at least her mother, who I saw sitting with the other chaperons across the room over there, but there would be too much explanation required. Do you know what I should do, Your Grace? I am terribly afraid that something bad has just happened to my friend." Lady Elizabeth finally stopped talking and stood before him, wringing her hands. Alex didn't wish to terrify her, but he very much feared the same thing. Keeping his voice as calm as possible, he asked her a few questions. "How long ago was this, my lady?" "I cannot be certain, but I believe it is no more than 15 minutes ago, although it feels longer because I have become increasingly scared. But it was just before the waltz. Then there was a quadrille, and now they are just striking up the cotillion." "Very good, my lady. Now, are you absolutely certain it was Sir Broderick who approached Miss Smythe?" "Yes, Your Grace, I am absolutely certain. I would recognize his distinctive face and short stature anywhere. Besides, the look of distaste upon Rose's face was also very recognizable." Despite her nerves, Elizabeth smiled over this thought. "Thank you, my lady, you are being most helpful. Now, are you certain no one else noticed this exchange between them?" Elizabeth shook her head. "Not completely certain, Your Grace, but even if anyone remarked upon it, there was no evidence of anything. Rose did not struggle or call out, and aside from his grip on her arm, there did not seem to be anything he was doing to force her. If I did not know her feelings about him, I would not have thought much of it. But I do know, and that, coupled with the fact that I cannot now find her, leads me to believe that he has taken her somewhere." Alex could see that Rose's friend was getting worked up, and he tried to soothe her to avoid any attention being drawn to their predicament. "Perhaps we are getting worried over nothing, but I will look into the matter. Can you remember which direction they went?" He was relieved as Elizabeth pulled her fraying wits back together and looked out from the alcove. Pointing toward the orchestra, she said, "I was over there, facing toward the dance floor, with my back toward the musicians. Rose was almost directly across from me. When they turned away, I could see their backs, so they went in the direction of the retiring rooms. But I already looked there." "Very good, thank you. That was an excellently detailed description. I'm going to go and do some discreet investigating of my own. Could you find Lord Dunbar and tell him what you have just told me?" Elizabeth appeared to be grateful to receive an assignment, and without another word hurried away to do as he had asked. Alex stood looking around, glad for his height as he was able to get a better idea of what was around. Seeing a few doors and passageways at the back of the ballroom, in the direction Elizabeth had indicated, he set off at once. Passing the wall of windows on his way by, Alex glanced toward them, but there was nothing he could see except the reflection of the dancing crowds. It was so very difficult to hurry in a crowded ballroom, especially when one was a duke. Alex tried to keep a pleasant expression on his face, and made every attempt to avoid being drawn into any conversation as he made his way through. With a smile and a nod to whoever hailed him, he finally reached his destination. The fast door he reached was locked. He hoped Broderick and Rose had had as much difficulty getting through the crowds as he had, he thought distractedly, or else they will have an even greater lead on me. Next to the locked door there was a hallway that was not lit welcomingly like the rest of the space opened up to the Rotherhams' guests. Alex set off down that passage, hoping he was not chasing a dead end. There were a couple of doors off this passage, but his investigation proved they were merely closets and storage areas, not large enough to be containing a missing lady and a wayward knight. Alex finally reached a door at the end. He surmised from the turns he had taken that it might lead outside. It was not locked. Opening the door, he stepped out into the cool night, angry and terrified to see a carriage in the distance as it pulled out onto the street. Even if it contained his Rose, there was nothing he could do to stop it from this distance. With disgust, he turned back to the doorway and nearly collided with Wesley. Cursing in his frustration, Alex gritted his teeth to stem the flow of his vitriol. He was glad to see the Viscount, and it was not his fault they were too late to save the lady. "Thank you for coming, Dunbar. Unfortunately, I think we just missed her. If Broderick has taken her, they just drove away in that carriage." "Are you sure? Did you see her?" Alex had not seen Elizabeth, and was surprised to see her stepping out from behind Wesley. Alex's look of disbelief directed at the Viscount merely produced a sheepish shrug. "She would not be denied the opportunity of looking for her missing friend. I did not wish to waste my time arguing with her when I could be helping you with the search." "I do not think a search will produce anything but causing a commotion. If at all possible, we shall have to try to retrieve Rose without anyone amongst the ton finding out that she has gone missing. I am quite certain they have left the premises, so we shall have to formulate a plan to figure out where he might have taken her, and why." Alex looked at Lady Elizabeth, feeling sorry for his next words. "I am so sorry to have to tell you this, my lady, but you will not be able to accompany us. You will have the difficult task of getting through the rest of your night, pretending as though nothing is amiss. I will try my best to keep you informed as soon as we know anything, but it most likely will not be before tomorrow. Do you think you can manage that? We might need to call on you soon in order to preserve Rose's reputation." "I will keep myself in readiness, your Grace. Do not trouble yourself about me. I am not in any danger, except that of boredom. I do believe I shall soon find my mother and plead a headache, as there is no way I will be able to enjoy the rest of the ball. But you two hurry along, and do whatever needs to be done." Alex was about to dismiss her from his mind, as he had so many things to do, but then Elizabeth continued with another thought. "Your Grace, did I do the right thing in telling you instead of her parents? Do you not think we should tell them? Now that you are chasing after her, should I find Lady Smythe and let her know what is going on?" Alex hesitated. He knew Rose had planned on telling her father about Sir Broderick, but he was unsure if she had managed to keep his name out of the situation. The fact that she had been at the ball this evening proved she had not been banished as she had feared. But did that also mean she had not had a chance to tell her father anything? Clearly Lady Smythe has to be told something, or else she will cause a scene when she cannot find her daughter, Wesley pointed out reasonably. Alex laughed. Lady Smythe does not cause scenes. It is her abiding motto. But you are quite correct. She must be told something. I would prefer to deal with Lord Smythe myself. Do either of you know if he is here this evening? I did not see him, Your Grace, Elizabeth replied, while Wesley merely shrugged and shook his head. All right. I will collect my servants and try to glean as much information as possible. The good news is I had already set someone to the task of watching Broderick, so hopefully we will know something very soon. I will go and try to speak to Lord Smythe. If you two could try to get Lady Smythe out of here without her raising a hue and a cry over her daughter. Wesley cast a sceptical glance at his friend. Are you quite certain you are up to the task of facing Lord Smythe on your own? There is very little other choice, my friend. But thank you for your concern. Alex grinned at the Viscount. I actually am of the opinion that the two of you have the harder task. At least in the privacy of his own home, the Baron can react however he sees fit. Thank you, Your Grace, for your help in this matter. I will speak with Lady Smythe, and then perhaps Lord Dunbar can escort her home. I will collect my own amarr and wait at our home for any news. I dearly wish that I could be helping in some way. Before he left, Alex squeezed the young woman's hand comfortingly. Do not mistake the matter, my lady. You have been a great deal of help. If not for you, we would not even realize that anything was amiss until it was much later. Now we might be able to get this all straightened out before daybreak.